Malcolm Little, son, brother, Robin Hood, homeboy, hustler, pimp, dancer, Jack Carlton, Detroit Red, Big Red, thief, convict, Satan, convert, Muslim, Malachi Shabazz, rebel, student, debater, intellectual, minister, activist, teacher, poet, prophet, witness, black nationalist, Pan-Africanist, humanist, revolutionary, El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz, our shining black prince, our living black manhood, ancestor, husband, father, best known as Malcolm X. Malcolm X's legacy is still becoming, just as he was when he was alive. He was always in motion, from moving around as a child to moving in between cities as a young man to relocating to different prisons to ministering in every Nation of Islam temple to speaking on college campuses and television broadcasts across the nation to traveling across the world. He was always in motion and thus always developing, transforming, and becoming. As he said himself, his life was always one of changes. And I believe this is one of the many great miracles and profound lessons of his life, that he was able to balance this line perfectly of having the strongest conviction and never letting that conviction get in the way of revising his beliefs and actions. He allowed his life experience to affect him. One outcome of having lived so many different lives, though, and being such a complex human being, was and is that people can kind of freeze and take a snapshot of whatever aspect of Malcolm best suits their needs, whether that be a certain part of his life or any one of his countless quotes, and mistake the territory for the map. And in this process, commodify, iconize, and dehumanize this human being. And frankly, I think avoiding that trap can be difficult when a person appears larger than life and you haven't experienced and interacted with them when they were alive. For those of us who have never met him, we strive to make him real through listening to his speeches, reading his words, looking at his photographs, and harnessing the electricity he still provides to our consciousness and our hearts. For many of us, that journey began when we read the Autobiography of Malcolm X for the first time. This book came out 9 months after he was assassinated in 1965 and has already influenced generations of people around the world. Today, like every day since the book has been published, someone is picking up the autobiography for the first time. They will learn of the man born Malcolm Little in Omaha, Nebraska, to Earl and Louise Little, two radical Garveyites whose life had the dynamism, strength, ebb and flow of a mighty river. Malcolm X and Alex Haley both were aware of how the book would contribute to Malcolm's legacy in myth-making, and Alex Haley understood that first, as the sensationalist journalist that he was. Malcolm originally intended for the book to just be a guide to the Nation of Islam's philosophy and religion and a dedication to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But as they continued to work together and Malcolm broke with the Nation of Islam in the beginning of 1964, Alex Haley was able to get Malcolm talking more and more about his own life story. Malcolm gradually warmed up and accepted this change of course, but famously said to Alex Haley that nothing could be in the book's manuscript that he didn't say, and nothing could be left out that he wanted in it. He also didn't expect to live long enough to see the book in its finished form, and even predicted how contentious his legacy would be after he died, stating that the white man will make use of me dead, as he has made use of me alive, as a convenient symbol of hatred, and that will help him to escape facing the truth that all I have been doing is holding up a mirror to reflect, to show the history of unspeakable crimes that his race has committed against my race. The autobiography immediately had an impact on his reception in the public eye. Publications that were critiquing him before were now lauding his story as inspirational. Another tragic example of loving a black man only after he dies. Since the autobiography, there has been an effort to clarify the facts of his life in subsequent biographies to try to get a more complete picture of Malcolm X's journey in the context of his time. Most recently, The Dead Are Rising by Les and Tamara Payne, and most controversially, Manning Marable's Malcolm X, A Life of Reinvention, which Manning Marable himself did not live to see published either in March of 2011. Not just one, but two full anthologies of scholars critiquing Marable's work were published in subsequent years. The debates over the life of Malcolm X are at their best meaningful and constructive discussions over the research process of history, the integrity of sourcing, and the interpretation of those sources. At their worst, these debates feel like puritanical squabbles over who the true Malcolm is and foster the very resentment and division that Malcolm X himself was trying so hard to alleviate within the Black community. They stifle the necessary conversations on how to learn and build from Malcolm's legacy, how to make sense of our times like Malcolm made sense of his, and struggle for clarity in our philosophy and our actions. While I am still relatively nascent in my understanding of Malcolm X, I see three of the fundamental building blocks of Malcolm X's philosophy as striving for self-respect through education, self-defense for protection, and Black self-determination through unity. Self in these cases speaking to Black people as individuals and a collective, as Malcolm stated in his founding speech for the Organization of Afro-American Unity on June 28, 1964, a race of people is like an individual man. Until it uses its own talent, takes pride in its own history, expresses its own culture, affirms its own selfhood, it can never fulfill itself. And this quote goes straight into what Malcolm saw as self-respect.
Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you?
Just as Malcolm found a new level of self-respect through his own reading and education of history, he saw the exposure to both the evil of white supremacy and the beauty of Black people, history, and culture as fundamental to personal and political freedom. As he continued in his founding speech for the OAAU, education is an important element in the struggle for human rights. It is the means to help our children and our people rediscover their identity and thereby increase their self-respect. Education is our passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs only to the people who prepare for it today. I think the striving for self-respect is also seen through Malcolm's ongoing practice of discipline. In keeping with the Nation of Islam's beliefs, he only ate one meal a day, didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't curse, and always tried to be time conscious. These standards, of course, can change depending on the standards of a person, but Malcolm exemplifies the importance of choosing to act in accordance with your ideals. Next is the importance of self-defense. I'd say this is probably Malcolm's most misunderstood part of his philosophy and what had Malcolm frequently labeled as a proponent of violence and hate, when it is only a reasonable outgrowth of the continued state violence against Black people.
When we see our people being brutalized by white bigots, white racists, we think that they are foolish to allow themselves to be beaten and brutalized and do nothing whatsoever to protect themselves. They are foolish. They should have the right to defend themselves against any attack made against them by anyone. If a dog is biting a black man, the black man should kill the dog. Whether the dog is a police dog, a hound dog, or any kind of dog. If a dog is sick on a black man, when that black man is doing nothing but trying to take advantage of what the government says is supposed to be his, then that black man should kill that dog or any two-legged dog who sicks the dog on it.
When Black people can defend themselves and protect themselves, then they are free to self-determine. Black self-determination was always the goal for Malcolm, whether he was talking about Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, taking our human rights struggles to the United Nations. It was all for this reason. Black self-determination is characterized as the ability for Black people to determine our own fate and develop our full potential without any state-imposed limitation. Malcolm saw this self-determination being actualized through strengthening our economic and political power. As he stated again in the founding OAAU speech, basically, there are two kinds of power that count in America: economic power and political power, with social power being derived from those two. In order for the Afro-Americans to control their destiny, they must be able to control and affect the decisions which control their destiny: economic, political, and social. This can only be done through organization. In the last year of his life, after breaking from the nation, Malcolm X's primary goal was to organize and unite Afro-American people for economic and political power through the organization of Afro-American unity, and even in an interview a month before his assassination, was reevaluating his organizing philosophy, asking the question, can we sum up the solution to the problems confronting our people as Black nationalism? And if you notice, I haven't been using the expression for several months, but I still would be hard-pressed to give a specific definition of the overall philosophy which I think is necessary for the liberation of the Black people in this country. These are questions that are still yet to be answered, that might need stronger follow-up questions rather than definitive answers, questions that can propel us into a new evolution and remain unanswered for the next generation.